The Sony A7 IV is still one of the most recommended cameras you'll find right now in 2026. But no camera's perfect, and while the A7 IV does a lot of things really well, there are also a few things about this camera that can be pretty frustrating. I also posted another video at the exact same time called What I Love About the Sony A7 IV, because the reality is no camera brand gets everything right, and when looking at a camera, it's really important to look at it from both sides. So in this video, I want to talk about 4 things that I actually hate about the Sony A7 IV. The first thing that really bothers me about the A7 IV is the crop in at 4K 60. When you shoot normal at 4K 24 or 30, you're using the full width of the sensor, which is great. But if you switch to 4K 60, the camera suddenly applies a noticeable crop. And for those of you that maybe don't know what that means, your lens basically becomes tighter. For example, if you're using a 20mm lens, the field of view suddenly looks closer to a 35mm. And that can be pretty frustrating, especially if you're needing that extra room. Sports and wedding videographers always come to mind when thinking about 60 fps because of thinking about wanting to slow down that footage in post, and especially for shooting those two types of video, you need all the frame you can get. It's not a deal breaker, but it's definitely one of the limitations of this camera. Another thing I noticed about the A7 IV is that it can get warm during shooting longer sessions. It's not immediate and it doesn't make the camera unusable, but if you're filming for extended periods using the electronic viewfinder or shooting in warm conditions, the camera can start to heat up. Sometimes you'll even get a warning on screen and the camera still performs really well, but it can interrupt a flow if you're in the middle of shooting. It's one of those subtle frustrations that reminds you that even a highly capable camera like the A7 IV has its limit. And if you're someone who does long sessions often, it's something you'll notice and need to plan around. Here's a quick tip too. Something to kind of help me combat the overheating is to not rely on basic batteries that it comes with. I usually have it hooked up to a dummy battery, to a D-tap, and then to a V-mount battery. These things last a long time and I haven't seemed to notice too many overheating problems. By the way, I'll have these and all my gear that I use to make my YouTube videos linked in the description below. Another thing that still annoys me about the A7 IV is the menus. Sony has improved them compared to older cameras and they are definitely better than they used to be, but they can still be confusing. There are a lot of pages, a lot of settings, and sometimes things are buried in places you wouldn't expect. When you first get the camera, it can take a while to really figure out where everything is. Now, once you customize the camera and set up your buttons, you don't have to go into the menus as often, which is nice. But getting everything set up in the first place can definitely be a challenge. The last thing I don't love about the A7 IV is the price. When this camera first came out, it was a really strong value for what it offered. Now, I said that, yes, it is cheaper than the A7 V, but it's still $2,000. But as time goes on, the camera market keeps moving forward. New cameras come out with faster sensors, new features, and sometimes even lower prices. And that means the A7 IV isn't quite the obvious choice that it was. It's still a great camera, but it's not necessarily the cheapest option anymore. Lumix has a great line of cameras right now that are in a budget range. Nikon has a couple good ones coming out or that have come out, and some of them may not be cheaper than the A7 IV, but they are jam-packed with more features. So, those are the 4 things that I actually hate about the Sony A7 IV right now. Even though I complain about a few things, the truth is I still think this is a really good and reliable camera. Every camera has its trade-offs, and the A7 IV still does a lot of things extremely well. And that's why it continues to be one of the most popular hybrid cameras out there. But I'm curious what you think. If you use the Sony A7 IV, or maybe you're a part of the Sony ecosystem, what is something that you don't like about it? Drop a comment below. And if you enjoyed this video, think about hitting the like button and subscribe. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you guys later.